now listening to Nexxlegacy Radio.
Charles Madison of Nexxlegacy Radio, and I have this beautiful guest here to talk to her about the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace, career as an author, and everything else that she is willing to discuss. And I have the beautiful Gwen Harvey here on Nexxlegacy Radio. Good morning, Gwen. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Charles. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate just, I always feel like when I have the opportunity to talk to artists that is an author, something that you have to me that I feel like the reader should be able to, I want to say not just pay attention to, but, I always believe in, Gwen, let's pick up a book and let's read and let's discuss. I mean, I love book clubs. I love a lot of different things that has everything to do with books. And to be able to have dialogue with you is going to be excellent because I want to talk to you about just the book as mentioned, the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace. But before we do that, I want to kind of dive in and talk to you about you and how did you get started being an author and, and how has this journey been for you so far?
Well, thank you. Way back when I was a child, I lived in England. I moved there when I was 9 till 14. And my writing really began at that time because in the British school system, the English was in 3 parts. There was grammar, literature, and then there was composition. So I loved the composition class because you'd go to class and they'd give you one line at the beginning of a story, and then you got to write for an hour. And that's what homework was like, too. They give you one line, and you go home and you write. And so I got hooked on writing stories when I was young. From age 9 to 14. But then I came back into the Canadian system, and that doesn't happen that way. And I started moving towards maths and sciences, and I did business in university and went out into the financial services career. So the writing was in journals or when I was traveling. As I had children, I would write about experiences that would happen with them. But the storytelling kind of went quiet and until COVID. And I had a lot more time. I had a business where I could have Zoom calls that meant I didn't have to travel. I didn't have evening functions. And so it was during COVID I started to write. And it was just a chapter and then another chapter. And 4 months later, the first book called The Girlfriend Book, I finished that and then started into this next one that we're talking about today. So I'm a relatively new author of writing novels. I've been writing for years, but I would say to anyone listening, if it's in you, you have a story to tell, you just sit down to start to write. It's really just finding the time and a spark of an idea, I guess.
I think what you said is important for those potential authors and people out there who have started a writing journal and has put it down and life situations has taken them in a different direction where they can't finish it or they're not able to for whatever reason. And, you mentioned COVID, and sometimes I think that, 2020 was a reflection for us all to, stay still and kind of see exactly what we need to do when it comes to who we are and things like that. It was a deep reflection, at least for me, but even as a business owner, I think in some cases we kind of, sometimes when you're in a situation, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. It's not necessarily all bad, right?
No, and it's sort of that phrase of if not now, when? When you start to ask that and what really is important and what are you waiting for? I think too with the writing piece for me, and it may happen with others that are listening that have that desire to write, is once you get writing, not to worry about knowing what's going to happen. I never did when I wrote. I wrote, and it was like a movie. I could see parts of it, but I didn't know what was happening. And it was only as I wrote that it started to develop. So I guess having trust that the story will unwind. And that's how both of my books have been written. And I now have a third draft of a third book, and it's just been written from just being curious about the characters. You do maybe stop and reflect about the characters that you want in what they're about. But then once you start having them interact and there's conflict in situations, then it can unwind, and you can always edit. The words they feel precious,
right.
but you can edit them.
Gwen, do you think that there is I always feel like it's always intriguing to me when you read a book or anything else, you start diving into more of the main characters that's in these books, right? You character development, I think it's always huge in a sense. So is that right out of the gate? Like, you develop this character and you're like, okay, I got to make sure that this person has a beginning, middle, and ending. Or you just kind of, like you mentioned, just kind of let it flow to how this is all going to turn out for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I let it flow because really it's no different than when you meet someone in life. You meet them in layers. You have your first impression, and sometimes that's wrong, and that happens often in this story, The Acquisition of Elizabeth Grace. You start to think you know someone, and then you realize you don't because you're seeing them through someone else's eyes, and so that layering allows you to develop the character over time. You don't have to be in a race to do that. And I know if I'm reading, if someone were to try to dump a character, everything about them too early, it feels formulaic, right? You want to experience like you experience life, which is in layers.
I think that's important. I mean, I think there can also be those developments, like you mentioned, subplots, whatever it is that you can think to be able to kind of get things moving in the right direction. And I just find it very intriguing, the mind of an author, because I'm sure, Gwen, there's so many things that's swirling in your brain in terms of how these, not just chapters, but how everything is going to flow. And I like hearing things like that because to me, I think, the mind of an author is just, it's so layered with so many different genius moments, in my opinion, because that's really, tapping into different parts of who you are as a person to come up with some creativeness when it comes to being an author, right?
Yeah, I think what works in our favor is that we do get to edit, so we can seem more profound because we've had a lot of time on that chapter to get those words just right. So it is something where I know in my first book I had friends that would talk about how wise some of these words were, and I thought, well, I had lots of time to think about them. But the other thing I think about too is when I was early writing during COVID, I took this master class online. It's they're already pre-taped, and it was Margaret Atwood, and she was brilliant in explaining different parts of novel writing. And one thing she stressed was you've got to make each chapter interesting, and people can't just go out into the back garden and sit there and talk. But if they're gardening and they find a hand in the garden, well, that's interesting. And she was just giving that sort of thought of make sure that you're not boring the reader, and you really thought this chapter something's going to happen. You might not fully know what it is, but make sure something does, or scrap the chapter. That was sort of early guidance from someone online who doesn't even know who I am, but it was helpful to do that. And I think we've all read books where we get sort of stuck in a section that just seems to go on, and you wish they'd kind of move along. So certainly reading teaches us too.
Extremely important. Gwen Harvey's my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio. And I think, Gwen, and I'm going to put this into a perspective of, I love to read. I love to read paperback books. I know a lot of people have Kindle and they have other means to be able to, find enjoyment in what they do. But me personally, I can never get enough of an actual, physical copy of a book. The evolution of not just being an author, but the evolution of watching or seeing people digest books these days is clearly different than how it used to be. You can go backwards a decade or two or three, and, the libraries are not what they used to be. They're still there, but, you kind of, the traffic isn't as, heavy as it once was. What do you think about just the state of just reading that we have in our society, not just in the States, but elsewhere as well, in terms of what we see now?
Yeah. I'm with you that, like you, I prefer reading the actual book, feeling it in my hands, and I went through a stage where I used the Kindle for quite a while. I find I can use the Kindle when it's a very light story, but if it's something more dramatic or something I might want to reflect on and go back and see something, then I need the hard copy. So, but more in answer to your question about looking out and what I'm seeing there, I do hear people using electronic through the libraries, so that you wouldn't necessarily see them going in the libraries, but they have subscriptions to libraries now that are electronic that seem to be well used.
Right.
So it may be that we're not seeing it as much, but there is that reading going on. And I know I listened to a podcast once, and they talked about reading, but is reading when you're listening to a book audio? And they were saying, well, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's that transfer of information. And it made me think back to when we were children and someone read to us, how powerful that was. So in a way,
Yes.
these audio is like a parent reading to you, or someone reading to you, and it's still powerful. So maybe just like we don't actually write on paper when we write, we're typing instead. The whole novel experience, whether you're creating it or reading it, is changing. Maybe I'm going to be an optimist and hope that we maybe don't see everybody with these books, but I'm hoping they are reading. But it's a good. The other point too, though, Charles, I think, and I heard it, is that because of the social media, people are reading maybe, but often at a very sort of I guess I don't want shallow level sounds bad. I don't mean shallow as in negative in intellect, but they're reading sort of
Right.
a thin layer as opposed to deep. And novels allow you to go deep into thinking. And so maybe that part is disturbing, because if you're constantly reading thin layers, in 10 years, maybe you're not as moved along with your thinking as you could be if you've gone deeper. So maybe I see a bit of that.
No, I and I'm with you, because I just look at everything nowadays, because there's a lot of things that we can consume. Literature is another means of it. Music is something else. There's so many different ways you can be able to get it, pick it apart. And like I mentioned, consume. It's, I always look at it like this, Gwen. You just don't want to, and this is for all the people out there listening too, you just don't want to take what you have for granted, because, as much as you have, when you have, why you have it, and the opportunities are there, you just want to seize the moment and experience, something out of what you get, not just picking up a book and read it, but getting deep into the characters and finding meaning in your own perspective as far as what you think about certain things. And, I say this to everyone about, what we read and what we listen to, and everything has an influence in what we do in life. Like, you're an author, so other authors or potential authors are going to, check out your catalog of things that you've accomplished and, be inspired by it, and, to a degree, or, they may have questions and they may reach out to you like I did in terms of, what's next for you. And I think it's important for all of us to be able to share it. I mean, we can have it, Gwen, in every single which way, but, sometimes we do have to step back and realize that, what, let me stop and, remember those moments of being read to, be it if it's in elementary school, or me reading to in cases like this with my daughter, and have those moments that she'll never forget. So it's very impactful, Gwen, right? In terms of like, the amount of, impact that a person can have when they just slow down sometimes too.
Yeah. And when you're in a book and there's a story, the way we experience and learn from it. So, someone can tell you that having differences in your life is good. It's good to have different things around you that make you fuller. But when you actually experience in a novel how all those differences between people make it a richer society, you then buy into it as opposed to just being told it. Right? It's so I think going deep into reading, you experience and you create levels of empathy and understanding. And, it's good for people to maybe experience that, so it goes deeper.
That is very true. Gwen Harvey is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio. Now, tell me about the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace. As I mentioned to you before we aired, I had a chance to start reading a little bit, and I'm intrigued, and I just want, without telling too much, because I want the people to go and make sure that they grab your book, but a brief synopsis of what this journey has been about, not just for you, but a little bit about the book and what's going on, because I find it very intriguing on a different life levels and life lessons type of situation. So, tell folks a little bit about it.
So the story, the novel, it's about a woman who suddenly leaves her family under mysterious circumstances. And then over the next decade, her daughter is seeking to understand what happened and figure out if there's a way to build back from all that was broken. And it explores these nuances of fraught mother-daughter relationships, the loss of love and wealth, and how when you lose wealth, and this is part of the story, how it's not the wealth that's lost in that life, it's everything else that gets lost and how damaging that is. And then there's also the difficult nature of wrestling with ghosts of the past, and the ghost piece has some double meanings over time as you read that book. So that's roughly what it's about. So I think there's different meanings I'm hoping people will take from it about looking beyond the surface of what something seems and what's really behind it. There's some things of embracing differences because it makes us richer, and then also about how to mend and build back when things have gone wrong, whether it's in families and life for others. That's what it's about. I think
in a lot of cases, uncovering one's journey and self-discovery and just finding out, not just, it's deeper than just, padding relationships in a term as far as, just trying to figure out certain things. It's like, the vibe that I'm getting is it's just going to be a lot, in my opinion, in terms of just discovery, not just about characters, but, sometimes this might leak into your own self and how you look at family and certain things like that, right? It's very intriguing. I can't wait to finish the rest of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. The discovery piece is huge through it. You nailed it. That's true.
Now, how long did it take you to get this done?
I would have written it over a 4 to 5 month period, and then when I submitted it, it got picked up by the publisher probably 6-7 months later. And once they accepted it, then when we moved into some editing, that took a few months. And that was my first experience working with an editor, because I had not worked with an editor with my first book, and that was fantastic. Chloe Robinson, who works with Rebecca Eckler at Rebooks, was a fantastic experience because she knew my characters, so it was great to have discussions about parts that maybe I could trim down something here. She never told me what to do, but she would suggest, this chapter's a bit long. Is there anything you could do that? And that was a great learning experience. Felt like I was in a course learning from her. Yeah. So that's it's like it gets a few months in editing. But the actual story piece probably took about a 4 to 5 month period.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing in a standpoint like this, and I hear stories, and for whatever the story is, some of these things won't get done for some authors. It may take, like you, and said 5 months, but some I've heard, from others, it might take 5 years, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Specific, amounts of times, and and I know you're not rushing to get it out to the people, but also I think, especially when you have a situation where, do you think you meet deadlines to the point, or you don't really have a deadline yourself? You're like, okay, I'll get it done when it's done, and then I'll start working on getting everything else to be taken care of so we can be able to get this out the right way for the people.
Yeah. I think for me what's happened is I want to know what happens to the story. I sometimes will walk away from a chapter and say, I can't believe she just did that. I don't,
right.
and then I have to solve the problem I've created because she just did something that, how are we going to get back from that? So I find it fascinating. For me, it's instead of going and watching another episode of Netflix, I'll come in here and it's another episode. And I do, when I finish a chapter, I just, breathe, take a couple days to think clearly here about what makes sense next. And so then I have a sense of it when I come to it, and then I'm off at it. So, and I tend to, in my work life, I've been like this too, very focused when I get onto something and complete it. And so for me, it's really just completing a chapter. I'm not thinking completing the book, but each chapter and completing it, but trying to make it an interesting ride for the reader.
Well, I think your listeners established and knew that we'll be either listening to this or going to, and we'll talk about, where people can go to get it shortly. But I think the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace and, and all the things that you have on your plate is an amazing tale of just resiliency, because to me, it's just like, as an author, as a musician, as anybody that's working in any field, you kind of have to sit back and reflect. And you know what? Let me give you your flowers today and always, because it's not easy. Because Gwen, think about it. What you're doing, you're giving a service to us. Like, yes, this is like pieces of what you do and how you do it, but you're giving it to us to consume, to find some relatable sense in what you're writing, and to talk about it and debate about it, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's like, once you're done, it's not even yours anymore. It's like you're giving it away to the people in a sense, right?
It's true. It goes out there, and it's when I am writing, I do have this feel of it's for others. I do feel that, and I find with the second book here, this acquisition of Elizabeth Grace, because there's a publisher, there is this chance now to have it out for more people to read and sense these characters, which just is thrilling, because the first one will gradually get more awareness. The Girlfriend book, it's a great book about relationships of three women over 3 decades. However, it didn't have that chance. It was self-published. It had a few hundred people that read it, but but the second book, I feel great that these characters will meet other people and have them think about their relationships and their families and family dynamics. And so I agree with you.
And I also think that because of your evolution and how you've gone, especially with the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace, they're going to go backwards too. They're going to, finish this book, anticipate the next one, but also go backwards and find your others, that, you know what, I need to figure out this woman because I need to know more. So let me go and see what else she has in her catalog to find. And to me, I think that's where it starts. And sometimes, your first book, great, you have these amount of readers, but your readership is going to grow based on, the effort that you continue to do. And then that's going to make people want to go back and look and see where it all started in terms of your, your career in itself too. And I think that's a great thing, right?
Yes, no, it is. And I do have a third book in draft form, which does need a lot of work. So, and I have to wait to get back to it until I've gone through a little more of helping this book along. But it's very different in some ways because it's a thriller. It's about stolen identity, and on that note, you don't know if the protagonist, this woman, is she or is she not who she says she is. She apparently is from England. She's come over to Toronto, so I have these two countries again in play. But it's different. However, I know that I want some of that same sensibility that runs through the two books so far, where there's some real thinking that that's not the author, well, I do, but the reader also goes through, that touches you. So there will be similarities in how it's written, but the material is different.
Oh, that's going to be another highlight. So I'm looking forward to knowing more as you continue to develop. Gwen Harvey's my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio. And Gwen, the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace, available now. Where can people get it?
Certainly you can get it online at, Amazon would carry it, but I would encourage if you have a local bookstore to support that and they can order it. It's coming out on the 26th of March, so you can certainly put the order in and be one of the first to receive it. And so I hope, Charles, your readers enjoy it. It's a good read. I've had a couple of readers read it ahead of time, and they were all very, very appreciative of reading it and said some wonderful things. So hope others do too.
Well, this station is, and I appreciate you and your team for supplying me with the opportunity to read it before it's out and available. And I definitely will make sure, and my team of supporters now will definitely make the opportunity to request that as well in terms of getting it out. But also, I'm gonna do this, especially when it comes time to for its release. Anyone that's going to be making a purchase, pre-order or purchase when it's available. And I'll make sure that your team gets this information as well. The first 5 people who do make a purchase, they either show you or your team receipts, Nexxlegacy Radio will be able to supply a $25 Amazon gift card for those who make the purchase, the first 5. So we will put this out, and we will make sure that your consumers are in the know. And I want those 5. I want those 5, Gwen, to not just leave comments and just I believe in this. I believe in the effort that people make. It doesn't take 5 minutes to write a book. There's a long journey with this, and I want people to really understand, consume, appreciate, come back with their thoughts and things like that as well. And we have to continue to find ways to be able to grow. So, Gwen, this is the least I can do, or the least the station can do, because I've read so far, I'm ready to get back in and finish the rest of it, so I can be able to put my review up as well. And you have a friend in the station that's going to be able to do what we can to support. So that's what we do.
Charles, thank you. That's so kind for you and the station to do that. And I have to say, you're a wonderful interview. You make me feel so comfortable. So thank you.
Well, I think that it also, you make it comfortable to have these conversations with, and also it's going to be great to be able to see growth, and not just how you do it, but to see your supporters continue to grow in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands or whatnot. So I want to be the one, Gwen, to say, hey, you know what? I remember when Gwen had the second book, The Acquisition of Elizabeth Grace, and she's on tour doing book tours and everything else. I just want to be the first one to say, hey, I interviewed her when this became bigger and bigger and bigger. But I'm intrigued by what I'm reading so far, and I just can't wait to take on the rest.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your support and your words. Thank you.
Always. Gwen is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio. And before we close, I would love to know, and the listeners would love to know, social media, website, anything that you can be able to deliver in terms of making sure that we add more to your growing base of fans. So.
Well, let me tell you both. Instagram, I have an author Instagram, and you can find the handle is Gwen K. Harvey. So my name in full, Gwen K. Harvey, and love to have you join. I've been posting, and so you can see some behind the scenes. And then the website is similar, so it's www.gwenkharvey.com. So I'd love to have people follow, and in the website you can subscribe. I warn you that because of the Canadian system, we have to 3 times, you're going to get 3 different emails that might go to junk to say, yes, you really wanted to subscribe and you are human and all those. But finally, you'll get a picture. If you get a picture of me coming at you with a little message, then you've reached the final door. So that's for the subscription for newsletters, which is free. Yeah, but thank you.
We have to knock 3 times until we see your picture, and then we can open it.
So
I'll be ready.
Yeah. And check the junk email,
There you go. Well, I think that's also, security purpose. You know how it is nowadays, Gwen. It's, we have to be safe, and we want real, I hate to say it these days, we want real people instead of, the bots. In the things that is not, it's not real.
That's true. It goes both ways. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I will definitely subscribe, and I will definitely make sure I check the junk email and everything else that comes in, and I'll make sure that, you have it on full display on the website. And I can't wait, again, like I mentioned, I can't wait to finish and review the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace by Gwen Harvey. And following you on social media is going to be excellent to be able to see your path and your journey and things like that, too, and direct traffic towards your website, because I always look at this in closing, Gwen, that, social media is great. To me, it's always an extra, it's like icing on the cake in a sense. But I also want people to realize and understand that going to your website is just as important. And subscribing is just as important to your website. So,
Thank you.
One day Instagram can go away. Facebook can go away, everything else can go away, but your website's going to still be there. Your mailing base of people who subscribe to your website still going to be there.
Yeah,
important.
And the power of radio. You think about, we have all sorts of medias, but radio is still, we love to listen, we love to hear. It's a fantastic medium.
Absolutely. And finally, Gwen, before I let you go, our station, we play music. What's in your music playlist right now, Gwen?
Oh my goodness. Just thought about this one. I'm one of those eclectic people. I love Van Morrison. I love Adele. I have that sort of romantic side in there somewhere. But I love the Rolling Stones. When I wrote this about the 60s, the 1960s, I thought, wow, to be back there, the Stones, the Beatles. But I love some of that too, and I love Diana Ross. There's a lot. Does that help? It's eclectic, and it's full of old and some new. I'm learning through my kids.
You could never go wrong with the Rolling Stones or Adele. And the diversity in music is always important to me. It's just, you can never have one channel when it comes to music. You have to, hey, let me tune in to here and see how this, and music is just like, reading in a sense. You just want to capture a moment that's going to make you feel a certain way, that's going to get you hooked, And I think that all kind of ties together in a sense, right?
Well said.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Gwen, I'm looking forward to a follow-up interview in the near future, so we can have dialogue about more, because we're going to turn this into like maybe a book club mania, because when I'm done with it, I definitely will have questions. So watch out.
Absolutely. You're welcome to talk anytime. Thank you, Charles.
Indeed. Gwen Harvey, my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio. Thank you very much for the time, and much success in everything that you do moving forward. Very talented author. I am looking forward to not just getting to know you more, but I'm looking forward to watching your journey unfold and grow. And I am here as a catalyst. If there's anything that I or my station can do, we're here. But again, I'm going to let the people know, and I'll make sure your team can promote this as well. Any purchases of the acquisition of Elizabeth Grace will come. First 5 will come with a $25 gift card from Amazon. So there you go, people. Gwen Harvey, okay. I appreciate you.
All right. All the best to you and all your listeners. Thank you.
You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the #1 radio station for the people.